Hello, welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. A while ago, I taught a series of classes on dungeon mastering at the local game store. And I taught them in person, which gives you some idea of how much of a while ago that was. I really hope people watch this in an era past the pandemic where that dates this a little bit. I've been in this apartment for quite some time. I did wear my good neck cushion for this, though. And the course covered essentials of game mastering, the very basics, the advanced, more improvisational styles that I use, and a little bit on game design itself and writing your own scenarios and maps and whatnot. I missed a unit. And in retrospect, I would, if I was going to teach another 3-session class, I'd skip the design segment, wrap that into the advanced course a little bit, and start a little bit earlier than basic dungeon mastering. First session wouldn't be basic dungeon mastering, but playing. Because playing a role-playing game, Dungeons and Dragons or whatever you're playing, is also an art. And being a good dungeon master flows from understanding being a good player. Now, when I say a good player of a role-playing game, I'm not talking about someone who follows all the rules and is very polite and is a joy to have at the table because of your scintillating personality. Everyone should strive to be that kind of player, but nah, that's kind of a baseline. Following the rules, being nice to everyone, bringing snacks from time to time. No, what I'm talking about is well, there's a discipline to being a good player. At a convention or a similar short format 4-hour game, a pickup game someplace that someone is running for an organized event or what have you, you can show up with nothing. No books, no dice, no anything. Sit down, be handed a pre-generated character. There's dice on the table. You pick them up. Someone's telling you everything you need to do, as much as you haven't picked up yet, and you go with it. Game Master starts with a scenario, and you're off and running. That's not your weekly, long-going campaign experience. It starts, being a good player, that is, before the game does, before session 0. You want to start being a good player by letting a dungeon master bounce ideas off of you, if that's the position you're in or relationship you are to the DM. Feed their imagination a little bit. Give them honest ideas about what you expect to be doing in a game. Talk about some of your favorite times. Be an active participant in the thought process leading up to the game. Session 0, show up ready to make a character. Maybe you have a concept in your head, maybe not. Maybe you have 2 or 3 that you're ready to juggle in your head. If you've made a character by this point in time ready for approval, that's awesome. That's really not necessary for a session 0 because the party gets built in session 0. You're sitting around, well, we've got a fighter and a rogue. Do we have anyone who can handle the magic? Do we have a sorcerer at least, a wizard, something? Integrate a little bit. Be prepared to, again, be an interactive part of this. Game Master is going to be looking for what everyone's expecting. and seeing where people want to fit into that, find a spot. Find a spot where your character, the character you want to play, has a reason to be in that adventure. There's nothing wrong with playing the outlier, playing the loner character, the guy on the outside, the person who's a little shady and dark and maybe edgy, if not necessarily a lord of the art. And that person who's maybe doesn't, because of how the character is conceived and written, that you don't necessarily fit into a group dynamic perfectly. Maybe you're begrudgingly a member of the group, but the group's got the same goals that you, so you're following along anyway. And maybe, just maybe, the treasure you find is the friends you make along the way. Don't be that person who makes the character who spends the entire adventure grabbing the game master by their lapels, dragging them across the table, and going, well, you've given everyone else an adventure, but when are you going to let me do what I want to do? None of this appeals to me. I've got an entirely different character backstory with different motivations, and I don't know why I'm here. What's my motivation? Because your character's motivation is your job, not the dungeon master's. Dungeon master's there to provide you with reasons to have a motivation, a background that could provide some motivation, a world in which motivations can happen, and the beginnings of a story, which may contain some motivations. Which one of those you latch onto? Entirely your gig, but you want to latch on to something that's there and not come up with something else entirely that puts you at cross purposes to everyone else trying to get stuff done in the game. It's not as much fun as you think it is because you don't want to be that person. As the game progresses, not everyone is going to be playing at the same level of skill. People are people. You can be playing with people for years at a time, and there's still people around the table who are very good at some stuff and not quite as good at some stuff, and maybe even bad at some stuff. And that's okay. You're there to have fun. It's a game. That person who never knows what dice to roll, let them know what dice to roll. Doesn't have to be snide, doesn't have to have any sarcasm attached. They need to know what dice to roll. You might have told them 50 times. Tell them 50 more. And after that, get another 50 loaded up because they're still going to need it. That's okay. We don't all think the same way. Someone doesn't understand a mechanic. If you do, that's awesome. Explain it. Take the time. If the dungeon master doesn't have the time at the moment or is looking a little harried about it, take a moment, explain it. If you're doing it online, send a DM. This is how this works. You will probably have to do that again. There's nothing wrong with that. Someone forgets everything that happened in the last game. As a dungeon master, I forget everything that happened in the last game. And people gently remind me. Some people are going to remember most things. Or everyone's going to remember a different something that was the focus of their character. And you put together a picture. That's part of the session. That's how things begin. You recap as a group and then move on. Nothing wrong with that. People have different levels of skill and ability. In return, if you find yourself falling, maybe you're having an off day. Maybe you just don't grasp one thing or another. Maybe the math in this one mechanic is just something it doesn't lock in your head. And see if someone's there to help. There probably is. See if there's something you can do to learn it. If not, that's okay. Not everyone can. God, Dungeons and Dragons, particularly 5th edition, has a very few math-based mechanics that are going to be difficult to grasp. You're playing something like Game Design Workshop Space Opera, where you need to do differential calculus to work out how much your character can lift. There might be some issues, and that guy with a scientific calculator at the table is probably going to end up being your best friend. And that's the mechanical part of being a good player. I like to be a player people want to have in their games. I try to make my characters varied. I do tend to play some of the same archetypes. We all have the archetypes we like to play. I like swashbucklers, I like sword fighters. But, okay, let's do a sorcerer for this game. Or maybe branch out a little bit, do a cleric or a warlock. That can be fun. That was fun. I played a warlock who's a grief counselor. Interesting character. Only got to play him once, but really enjoyed it. Take some time out of game. Read some stuff. Look at memes. Watch some YouTube. Watch some of your favorite movies. Let characters grow in your head. Pull one out every so often. Play something different. And when you play, be engaging. Try and find out things about the world. Don't go wandering off, kicking over every door, trying to see what is behind all the scenery, because quite often, Dungeon Master hasn't got that in their head or in the book in front of them, and you're just borrowing time from everyone else. The Game Master's trying to show you stuff. See it, look at it, smell it, scratch it, see what comes off under your fingernail, kick it a little bit, see if it falls over. There's plenty of stuff to do right in front of you. Something gets your eye off to the side, you want to find an extra detail, you want to suggest a couple of details. I've got a bad habit. I've read a lot of Larry Niven. And Larry Niven, as a science fiction author, famous for the Ringworld novels and his known space stories, I like his stuff because, particularly in his short stories, there is one absolutely cool moment per story. One moment of awesome where a simple mechanic that he has explained or a little fact off in the background becomes the overriding solution to a dire problem later on. I love that. This thing that you didn't think was going to have any bearing on the situation, and suddenly it's how everyone's going home at the end of the day. So I like doing that. As I'm in a situation in game, I will ask a couple of seemingly innocuous questions, kind of off to the side a little bit. The fight is starting, and you don't want to hurt the guy who's suddenly possessed by the dragon spirit. Or maybe you do, he earned some enemies, but it's a complicated situation, and you've murdered a lot of people who didn't have to be. So maybe this time you're going to see if you can work your way around it. And people are drawing weapons and getting their spells ready. And I ask, so we just had brunch, right? Was there pudding on the table? Not pudding. There's bowls of oatmeal. There's some there. Okay. So I went into the fight, smothering the guy in a bowl of oatmeal. He ended up drowning in it, but he got better. Those details are there. They might not all have been described. If you're looking for a detail, if it's not too out of place or out of the question, We just had brunch. There was food on the table. There was something there that I could probably press in a bowl up to someone's face to make them not be able to breathe that well. Um, Ask, contribute, set the scene a little, help the dungeon master set the scene a little. Is there one of those? This is a hunting lodge. Are there those trophies up on the wall? Maybe a deer with the antlers? Awesome. You might not use every detail you point out, but you're helping to flesh out the world. And you're finding out, you're showing engagement. And that feeds the game master's inspiration and how they present. You know, the more details you ask about, the more you're going to find are there, go figure. You're not there as a player to help the dungeon master tell their story. You are there to be a part of the emergent story that everyone is there to tell. Be a part of an emergent story. Maybe you're not a team player, but you contribute to the same goal. Everyone gets to the same destination. Everyone has the same story. You have all these people walking into these scenes and all these different perspectives. And that's basically it. Create a character that has a different perspective. And then play the hell out of that perspective. What is your point of view? How are things working from your point of view? Having conversations in character about how things appear from your points of view and letting these characters show their differences and, more important, sharing their similarities. That is the sign of good players, and it makes for good games. Game masters, and I say this from experience, get tired. There's a certain amount of fatigue that creeps in because you are creating a world in your head. Even if you've got the book open in front of you, even if you've read this and you've got box text to read when people walk through that door, getting people in that door and then fielding the questions around all the information that box text doesn't contain. What color dress was she wearing? Those kinds of questions are wonderful questions to have, and they help you flesh things out, and you're pulling creative energy out, and it's tiring. A good player puts some of that back in. That engagement, that conversation, those suggestions in the form of questions. Maybe there aren't any more details. Maybe this room is fairly blank. Particularly blank rooms can become a feature, but you want to see the life in them. You know, the dungeon master's description is a base suggestion of what is there, and the player's imaginations fill in details. And when people ask questions and look for particular details, or there's something that, is there a chandelier? I love chandeliers. How are they lighting the room? What kind of covering is there on the floor? Is it just dirt? Do we have a stone floor in here? Did they lay down some rugs? Things that people get interested in, that their characters get interested in, that they're looking for all the time. That becomes a level of detail that everyone has in common. You know, if the dungeon master doesn't describe, there's a picture on the wall, and then you move on. If he doesn't describe the picture, everyone walking in there has a different idea of what that picture is. But if someone says, is it a portrait? Who's on that picture? What is it? Just a landscape? And no matter what the DM pulls out of their backside as an answer for that question, now everyone has a rough approximation of the same picture in their head. Everyone's story gets a little bit closer to being the same story. That's what it's about. Being a good dungeon master is someone who can take that kind of give and take, that kind of input, that kind of storytelling, and weave it into the story that everyone has. It's hard. It is a hard exercise. It is demanding and it is exhausting, and it's one of the most rewarding things you can do. I have shown up to games completely destroyed. My Tuesday groups and things I've done with the layer action, game groups I've been with for years. I can show up, oh man, I got to run today. And, you reach deep and it's like, I don't have it. I do not have it inside me. Maybe we can do something else today. I'm just going to show up and we'll see what happens. And you show up and everyone shows up enthused. They're excited to be there for the game you are running. Get a little boost. Like, okay, I'll start it off. We'll see how far I can go. And when those players are on, when all the cylinders are firing, when you're getting that feedback and that energy and those questions, when people are putting things together and looking forward, when they want to go around the next corner just to see what's there, somehow that next corner shows up and the energy to get them around it is just there because it's not all yours. I've had some amazing players. I still do. And it is those amazing players that makes these regenerative acts possible, where the dungeon master shows up tired, empty, and leaves exhausted but energized, full, looking forward to the next week, already making plans. So yeah, being a good dungeon master involves knowing how that works and seeing if you can engender that kind of player at your table. Friendly atmosphere, a friendly, helpful atmosphere. There's an older stereotype of gamers being insular and aggravated. Anyone can have a bad day. And we've had those times where someone's there who's just not into it, not having a good day, not doing well, and taking it out a little bit on the people around them and on the game, and give them a little space. See if there's anything you can do to help. Taking a break. How's your week going? What's up? A good player is instrumental to help a dungeon master be a good dungeon master. A dungeon master, a good dungeon master, is instrumental in a player being a good player. It's not all about quality. It's not all about the skills you bring. It's about technique and attitude and just that certain enthusiasm that keeps everyone involved, invigorates not only the dungeon master, but the whole group. When everyone's got smiles and there's laughter and there's occasional bouts of applause, you're all doing it right. And when there's a story 10 years later, you're sitting around and just reminiscing about times, and that one time comes up, that one time that your character kind of lost it and set things on fire that aren't technically supposed to be able to burn, but you got them just hot enough. And that's the last time they tried to serve you a Diet Coke. When you've got those stories 5, 10, 20 years down the line, God, I'm old. Then you're doing it right. And no matter what other metric you try to use, well, we all knew what dice to roll, or or we all got X number of levels, or knew the rules to this degree. The only metric that's going to matter down the line when you're stacking up your games next to each other in your head. Did you have fun? Did you have a story? Did everyone have fun? Okay, then. And if you're stacking them up like that, that's when you win a role-playing game. Well, thanks for following along in this particular ramble. I'm trying to do these on a regular, but it's the winter and it's my brain and it's the pandemic, and I've been in these walls since March, so 9 months going on at the moment, and I might be losing my mind just a little bit, but we soldier on. It's not the worst I've ever been stuck in an apartment. I'm not stuck on a couch for 6 months at a time, so it's not that bad. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If there's anything else you'd like to hear me talk about, your experiences as a good player or with good players, other subjects you'd like to hear me cover, other things you'd like to hear me talk about, leave me a comment below. I will love getting your comment. You will love leaving me one. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, why not? My channel is awesome. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you do, hit the notification bell next to it so you're alerted when my videos become available. If you'd like to contribute to the channel in a more substantial manner, I invite you to hit me up my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum. Consider donating. Anything helps, allows me to make better videos more often. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I'm Scott Corum. This is what has mattered to me, and I'll see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.